If they've been watching you and still can't stop you, understand this. You already outranked their clearance. That's not paranoia. That's confirmation. The whispers were real. The strange alignments you couldn't explain? Not coincidence. The pull of eyes you felt when no one was there? Not imagination. You were being observed, and not by casual onlookers. Not by jealous coworkers, bitter exes, or nosy neighbors. No, the eyes on you belong to people trained to notice anomalies. People who sit in briefing rooms, analyzing code and chaos. People who don't blink unless the system itself glitches. And that glitch was you. You moved through pressure like it was air. You treated chaos like a riddle, not a threat. Where others saw walls, you mapped doors. Where others froze, you calculated. You didn't fight for attention. Attention recalibrated to you. You didn't echo pain. You transmuted it. You didn't yell to be heard. You whispered and still shifted rooms. Because your presence didn't just enter spaces, it rewrote them. They ran your patterns through every model they had. But what showed up wasn't failure. It was recursion, resilience looping endlessly. No root cause, no fracture point, no trigger that stayed. Only signal, only strength, only patternless power. That's when the labels failed them. That's when the files started coming back blank. Because you weren't fitting the narrative. You were overriding it. See, you weren't just on their radar. You became their case study. They weren't just watching you. They were asking how to approach you, how to explain you, how to contain what they couldn't categorize. Here's the part most don't realize. You didn't trigger their attention by causing chaos. You triggered it by refusing to break under it, by responding differently than the script says you should. When the system expects anger, you respond with silence. When they expect fear, you answer with clarity. When they expect collapse, you rise with strategy. That's not normal. That's not programmed. That's why they flagged you. You weren't acting out. You weren't rebelling for show. You were remembering truths you were never supposed to recall. And once they realized you weren't learning this, but remembering this, the entire game changed. You went from troublemaker to classified, because you weren't navigating the maze. You were mapping it, not reacting like prey, but moving like someone who already knew the traps were there, and it unnerved them. The silence they thought was weakness became your shield. The purity they dismissed as fragility became the distortion that broke their tools. Every test they designed for collapse turned into proof of endurance. They wanted to chart you, but your spirit wouldn't graph. You didn't pulse like instability. You didn't ping like manipulation. You didn't mirror trauma the way they expected. You broadcasted something else, a frequency too clean, too clear, too sovereign to file away. Their charts called it a glitch. Their reports called it unidentifiable. But among themselves, they whispered what no one wanted to say out loud. This one doesn't move like the rest. This one isn't from here. Understand what that means? Your stillness disrupted their algorithms. Your presence shorted out their predictions. Even your pain wasn't waste. It became proof. Because they tracked your wounds. They documented the betrayals, the breakdowns, the isolation. They recorded every unanswered cry, every silent battle, and they assumed, as always, trauma would win. But you broke their pattern. Instead of folding, you rebuilt. Instead of staying shattered, you reforged. You didn't just recover, you evolved. And that's when the observation turned into awe. The one they treated as a pawn began moving like a ruler, not because of power they gave you, but because of an authority they couldn't trace. See, pawns follow rules. You didn't. Pawns wait for permission. You never did. Pawns move one square at a time. You jumped dimensions. And every step you took rattled their confidence. Because for the first time, they weren't studying a subject. They were standing in the presence of a blueprint. You didn't beat their system by playing harder. You dismantled it by refusing to become what it wanted you to be. You weren't supposed to survive the setup, but you walked through the traps they designed for 99% to fail. And you didn't just walk out whole. You walked out radiant. Now their charts are useless. Their predictions failed, because what they expected to be paranoia turned out to be prophecy. You weren't losing your mind. You were finding it. You weren't falling apart. You were being revealed. And now they don't just want silence. They want access. They want the blueprint. They want to know how you carry storms that destroyed nations and came out with clarity. But here's the part they'll never understand. It wasn't your mind that got you through. It was your spirit. And spirit can't be replicated. Spirit can't be reverse engineered. That's why their systems glitched. That's why their rooms went quiet. That's why the whispers turned into reverence. Because they realized something they were never trained to admit. You weren't a subject. You were a sign. Not a glitch in the system. The evidence of a higher one. And now every eye on you knows the truth. You weren't just being watched. You were being studied. And still they couldn't contain you. Because you are not their case file. You are the case closed. Keep rising.